Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Huh? So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Hey, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you are a fan of comic books, if you're a fan of comic book conventions, and if you like meeting comic book creators and getting comics and comic-related stuff, then you need to make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con. This year's show is September 7th and 8th. Silverline will be there, so you should make your plans to be there too. We'll see you there. If you like comics and find yourself in the Orlando, Florida area, doesn't everyone come to Orlando at some point in time to see the House of Mouse? But when you're here, you need to make it a point to visit Coliseum of Comics, especially the one on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline Comics, even a limited edition Coliseum of Comics version of our comics. So, when you go, be sure to ask for Silverline Comics and tell them we sent you. OCD stands for Orlando Collector Deviants. OCD, Steve and Trish, they're a family of geeks who promote geek things, particularly those around the Orlando, Florida area. They're big supporters of Silverline, and we think you should be supporters of theirs too. Go give them some love. If you are an independent comic book maker and you need to get your independent comics made, you need to look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our books, and they do a bang-up job. They're not only trusted by Silverline, but many, many independent comic book makers. Head on over to kablam.com and see for yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Kilber, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday nights as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Silver Sunday, this Sunday night on October the 9th, 2022, year of our Lord. How's everyone doing?
Cold.
Cold? Pete?
I'm fine.
Over on the
I'm
island?
doing good.
Tommy, you all right?
Oh, I'm doing fine.
We have with us tonight a special guest, the legend himself, Mr. Marv. Oh, Tommy, you're going to ask the question, right? Tommy has the very first question, and I can't introduce you properly until you've answered the question.
Wasting no time.
So I'm going to let Tommy go ahead and ask you the first question.
Yeah, Roland's setting me up because we were Roland and I go bike riding, and we were talking earlier today, and I have heard your last name pronounced so many different ways. So, how do you pronounce your last name?
Correctly.
That's right.
Wolfman.
All right.
Wolfman.
That's what I said. Because you hear so many different ways, and they're like, what? Excellent.
There's a monster who's a wolf man. I'm just Wolfman.
Wolfman. Now, what is the origin of that name, Marv?
Excuse me?
What's the origin of that name? Like, is it
my parents? I don't know.
No. So is it doesn't sound like is it English, German, French? Do you know?
I'm sure that's a very logical question to ask in a very limited time space, because hundreds of hours would have to be spent before I can adequately answer that.
Okay. Well, okay. So I guess my question would be: do you know the answer to that?
Yes, okay. I have no idea what's going on. There is a reverb on the sound, so I'm actually don't hear every word that you're saying, but there is a slight reverb that's coming. So I'm trying to hear it. So best thing to do on your side is speak a little slower.
Okay.
And not as loud. And hopefully, you may be speaking at normal rate. I have no idea, but it's coming across with a reverb. So slower speed better.
if you happen to have earbuds or headphones, that might help. But I will do my best to speak slowly. You get us all excited. So, so the question was, do you know the origin of your last name?
No.
No? Okay.
I don't think my parents knew it or my grandparents. So,
wow.
If they did, they never mentioned it.
Interesting. That's interesting. Well, we're already getting comments here. Look at this. Vic, he always says that. Bonsura. I think that's high in a foreign language. I forget what it was. Phil Leon says, "Hey, Silverline peeps." And then he says, "Marv Wolfman, awesome." Jackson Rennick says, "Looking good, Marv." Retro Maniac James says, "Greetings, Roland, Marv, Peter, Thomas, and chat." So, so Marv, we're just going to pelt you with some questions. And one of the things that I would like to hear you talk briefly about is, I remember way back when you were in the Malibu offices back in the early 90s, you had talked about, and I don't remember the whole story, but I remember you speaking about when you and Lynn Wein were younger, the two of you would go to Jack Kirby's house, and this would be in New York, and hang out.
That's true. Absolutely.
How did that come about?
Excuse me?
How did that come about?
I'm not sure. Jack and Roz, his wife, lived on Long Island. And Lynn lived in Long Island, and I lived in Queens. But if you knew Jack, or if you met Jack, you'd realize very quickly they sort of became friends, and called up one time and said, "Can we come by?" And this was long before fandom and long before all of that. So the fact that somebody actually liked and wanted to talk to a comic book creator was a brand new concept, and felt good, and probably very reaffirming in that level. Jack said yes, and Roz said yes, I should say, and because she was in charge of everything there. She was upstairs, Jack was downstairs in his art studio drawing. But before Roz would let us go downstairs and speak to Jack, she had made lunch for us. And so we did. We went down, and you could not ask for a nicer time or a nicer person than both of them.
Yeah. I only briefly got to meet them when I moved out to California, just enough to be able to say, hello, kind of thing. We have Rob Davis joining us. Hey, Rob.
Yeah, just tuning in for a couple of minutes, see what's going on.
Yeah.
Very good.
We are just chatting with the legend himself. I got a couple more comments here. Vic says, "I've been waiting for this since Roland said something about it last Sunday." So glad to hear you're tuning in, Vic. Bobby Westgood says, "Hello, Big Dummy," and "Hi, Thomas the Bike Rider."
Look, now he's including me. Your father-in-law.
Hyper Potato says, "Howdy, y'all. Legends 2 weeks in a row. Thank you, Mr. Wolfman, for being here."
Pleasure.
And Vic says, that's sweet story. Atrocity Press said, what up? So so you how old were you and Lynn when that was going on?
Actually, someplace between 14 and 16, I would say. Maybe a little bit younger, I'm not sure. It's a long time ago.
Yeah. So, but you were like teenagers. You weren't like college kids.
No, I don't think it was during college. I think it was still teenagers. I could be wrong. It's a very long time, and I hadn't given it that sort of thought as to how old I was or anyone else at that particular point. But I think it was around there.
Mm. would you say that that time with Jack kind of inspired you to work in comics?
Well, what happened was I remember because I was publishing fanzines. So wait a second. Yeah, I was doing fanzines. So it may have been a little bit closer to 16 or 17. And I had just come up with a character. And Jack had at some point asked something to the effect of, do you want to do these things, do comics or whatever else? And I said, yeah. And I came up with this character. He said, tell me about him. And I did. And within 5 minutes, he told me more about the character than I had expected.
Wow.
Yeah, incredibly fertile imagination, and everything was perfect. I mean, literally, it was all there. And he didn't change it to his. He just made the thing I came up with so much better.
Yeah. Now, did you ever get the opportunity to work with Jack Kirby?
I'm sorry?
Did you ever have the opportunity to work with Jack Kirby?
Yeah, but sorry.
It's all right.
When I was the editor-in-chief at Marvel, Jack, I commissioned a lot of covers from him. And of course, at DC, I had written the intros in all of his Fourth World books, the text page.
Okay. Yeah. And of course, you wrote the intro to my own Demon's Tales, but you don't remember that.
You'll have to say it again. I'm sorry. I'm going to be.
It's okay. I said that you wrote the intro for Demon's Tales for me and Paul Pelletier and Tommy, but you don't remember that.
You are correct.
Well, that doesn't mean we appreciate it any less, because we appreciate it very much. So that's actually one of the questions that I wanted to ask. You mentioned Marvel editor in chief. How did that come about? Because this would have been middle 70s,
right?
Yeah. How did that come about?
Essentially, for in order, Roy after Stan went to publisher and all of that turned over to Roy. Roy eventually decided that he took a trip out west and decided he didn't want to go back to New York, and he left. The next person in line was Len, and he lasted about 6-8 months.
Yeah.
And then he left, and then I came in. So I was already editing the black and white horror magazines for Marvel.
Right.
So you were just the next person in line, is what you were saying.
Yeah. I mean, it could have gone otherwise. They could have said, you're on the black and white magazines, we'll find someone else. But they just shifted me over from the magazine line to the comics line.
Yeah.
And which, of course, I was already writing for.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Now, that was before also Marvel briefly went to writer-editor.
Yeah, well, that's because of Roy. Roy wanted to continue to edit his own books, and Stan never had a problem with any of that. Obviously, because Stan pretty much worked at home except for maybe 1 or 2 days a week, and had no problem thinking. His view was, if you were good enough to be writing for Marvel and they kept you, you could handle your own. You could edit your own material. We always had an editorial staff to go over. Everybody should always have somebody looking over their work. Make sure it's correct, make sure it's spelled right, make sure the stories work. So even though you're your own editor, somebody else was still going over the material, and it could have been several different people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And how long were you editor-in-chief, approximately?
Well, I think a year or two, something like that. I'm not positive. What happened was, in my case, Marvel was bought by a company called Cadence,
Mhm.
and Cadence turned my job from a creative job, editor-in-chief, working with the writers, to much more of a business job. And I really had no facility to do that sort of material. I couldn't care less about the business side of things, but
Right.
they wanted that. And so following Roy and Lynn, I made a deal where I could write and edit my own books, and I took off.
Okay. Okay. Now, did you take off to go to California as well?
Excuse me?
Did you take off and go to California as well?
No, I still lived in, that was in the 70s. I was at Marvel, and I moved to California in 86.
Oh, okay. Okay. So that didn't come till later.
No, I just meant that, I work from home, and I had an office there if I wanted it. And, one day a week I may come into the office just to, keep in touch with everybody.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How did you? So what was your very first comic work? I know you said you did some fanzines, but what was your very first comic work?
Black Hawk.
Black Hawk. Okay.
An issue of Black Hawk. Yeah.
Huh. What's your longest running? I guess Titans would be the longest.
The longest runs. Yeah, I was on Dracula for 8 years, and I was on Titans for I think 16.
Wow.
And I occasionally still write stories. I haven't written any of the entire team, but which I prefer not doing. But I have written, recently Raven stories. I've written the individual characters.
Right. Yeah. I saw, I guess it's on your website that you had a couple of pictures with some of the actors who have played some of these characters. What was that like, getting to meet some of those characters that you had envisioned? And
Oh, it's fun. I'm not starstruck in the slightest. After all, I came up with those characters.
Right.
They're playing characters that I wrote, so sometimes they're actually more enthusiastic. I like meeting them to make sure that they understand the characters, at least as far as my stuff is concerned. They decide for a TV show or a movie or something like that if the character is going to be handled differently or how they're going to. So their view of what the live action or animated version of the characters are is 100% theirs, and they can or cannot decide to follow through on anything I say. But I like to speak to them, and most of them want to speak to me to understand the background of the characters.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not, as I say, I'm not really starstruck in any of those things because they're just saying words that I said, that I wrote. So.
What would you say that of the characters that you created and worked on, what would you say is the biggest surprise to see in a different medium? In other words, you see them on a game or animation or TV show, and you go, "Huh, that's not the first character I would have imagined being there."
No, there's so many that you're surprised by. For instance, the fact that Deathstroke has become such a big thing in so many versions of the Titans.
Yeah.
I saw him as the villain, so I thought he was not something that the TV or the movies would pick up on. But Brother Blood is the major villain for next season of Titans, and I certainly never expected him.
Wow.
Because that thing is so steeped into religion and such, I never thought that they would put that on TV. I have no idea the handling, but we'll see in November, I think, the show premieres. The fourth season premieres.
Yeah, cool. No, which is the one, which character do you think is like, yeah, I expected that one, it's about time?
Oh, gee. I don't know. Maybe Raven.
Okay.
She's a strong character, and I'm so happy that she's done, and she's done very well on the Titan show.
Yeah. Now, I also want to say, if we ask you anything that's out of bounds,
so shut up.
I'll let you know.
Okay, yeah. I was gonna say, just tell us it's out of bounds.
I'm not shy.
I wanted to know, like, of some of the characters that made it. Well, I had some other questions, but the ones that made it into the live action or the cartoons or the animated stuff, like which it's a two-parter, I guess. Which ones did you go, yeah, they got that one right, and they're still doing it right, and then which ones you go, well, they just got that so wrong, and then they're never going to get it right, compared to what you came up with, I guess.
Yeah,
the way that you would write it.
I'm trying to think. The most of the characters, I can't really say because they're a different medium and they're a different audience. So yeah, I'm utterly surprised that they're doing Brother Blood in any version. Now the one, whether it's the one that was on Arrow or the one now, visually, based on what I've seen of the new version of Brother Blood, the new character, it looks pretty close to what George and I did.
Yeah. Did you get both parts in, Tommy?
That's good. Yeah, basically he's saying I better not say anything about which one I did.
Pete and Rob, if y'all got questions, you need to just jump in, because if you don't,
unfortunately, you already asked all the questions I came up with.
Okay.
In my mind. So, but as we progress, if I think of something, I'll hand. I'm also happy to be here listening to him recount parts of his career. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
To be honest, I probably wouldn't be listening in just as you were recording, but being on film, I'll be really be listening and paying attention, even though it looks like I'm working here, which I am. I keep my ear tuned in, but if I have a question, you know me, I'll pop in.
All right.
I'm not shy.
Sounds like Peter had a question.
Yeah. So Marv, so you created a lot of characters. Do you feel like writers now in Marvel and DC and big publishers, do you think they're creating as many characters as you did, or do you think they're just reusing the same characters again and again because they don't own the characters?
Well, I know that my preference was to create new characters because I enjoy that. I loved it when Stan and Jack and Steve Ditko would bring new characters I'd never seen before into their books. And my feeling has always been, if you use a company character, you use a character that's been around that somebody else created, you're sort of obliged to create one to add to the mix as well.
Cool.
I'd like to see the new creators doing that. But there's a very different situation today, and that is when I was doing it and when Stan was doing it and Jack Kirby and everybody, you didn't get to own your characters.
Yeah.
And these days you can, so it makes total sense that a lot of creators do not want to give away a character.
Yeah.
In which, whether or not they're capable of creating a character is something else, but if they are, they may not want to just give it away. So you can't fault them for that because we never had that option.
Right.
I certainly would have, created more that I owned or but at some point I stopped.
We won't talk whether they're capable or not today. That's a different discussion. We'll have on a different day.
Well, I kind of have a little follow up of Peter's thing. So I tried to look earlier today to try just to get an actual count. I know you say somewhere that Stan Lee created more characters than you, but you've created a boatload of characters. Do you actually have a count of not only just ones that you created, but co-created also. Like you can group those together. Do you have a case?
As a writer, you are always co-creating.
Yeah.
So and I've been very fortunate to have a lot of good partners in comics. Right from the beginning, pretty much. So I'm happy that they were a co-creator with me on that material.
Do you have a count for those? How many?
No, I have no idea. I believe there's some website that has it that listed. Even there, they are probably wrong because my credit not be on everything. They only know what my credit line is.
Right. We got a few more comments here. Twitless says, "Hey, is that Mr. Kablam himself?" There he is himself. That's Mr. Kablam. I don't know who Twitless is, Tommy. Sorry, Twitless. We don't know who you are. Vic says, Mr. Wolfman, do you have any tips for making a successful team book?
Well, you can't assume it's going to be successful because there's a million things beyond creating the characters and the world that get in the way. My view is you create interesting characters with an interesting backstory so that you could keep playing with them and develop the characters. Make them characters that people are going to enjoy reading about. That doesn't matter if it's a hero or a villain. They have to feel real, and they have to feel that the readers want to see more about that character.
So when you come up with a team, do you have in your mind, okay, I need a strong guy, I need a flying guy, I need a smart guy? Do you have any kind of thing in your mind when you're not like that?
No, because not in the way you're phrasing it. Because the powers that a character has, for the most part, are incidental. I care about the characters, the characterizations, who they are, what they are as people, and then I may come up with the power afterwards. But I'm much more interested in what the emotional connection between all the characters are.
So do you I use the Myers-Briggs. Are you familiar with the Myers-Briggs personality type?
Say that again, please.
Are you familiar with the Myers-Briggs personality type?
No.
I use the Myers-Briggs personality type for my own work. So do you have a personality type for the different characters that you're shooting for?
What I'm shooting for is something that makes that character interesting to me, that I could keep, that they're not a one-note character, so they can go on for years. You think about it, the Titans has gone on for since 1980, so 30, 40 years. And I could still come up with individual stories for every one of those characters because I spent a lot of time, a real long time, developing the characters up front, who they are, what they care about, what they don't like, what they do like, what they want, what they don't want, all those things. Then you place them in relation to each one of the other characters. How do they act together? What do they think about the other characters, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So that to me is what the book is interesting. You've seen every fight scene. If you've read a comic, you've probably within 2 years, you've seen every possible fight scene. The action and the superpower is miscellaneous to me. It's very minor. It's purely about who these characters are and why do I like them, or why do I like to read about them if they're a bad guy. As proof of that is Deathstroke is so popular, and he's not a good guy. But he's interesting, and he has a lot of layers to him. All those things I spent a long time looking up before I submitted them.
So so I guess here would be a follow-up question. Because you spent, you said 16 years, right, in the Titans. Was it difficult to give up? When you came to the end, was it hard to turn loose of these characters?
No. First, as I said, I still do them on occasion, but
Right.
not really, because I felt that I had, at that particular point, because it was pretty much nonstop, I felt that I had gone as far as I could at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe take off a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever. But you don't, if you care about these characters, you don't want to repeat yourself a million times. And if you start to find it's hard to come up with ideas, it's better to leave.
Right.
And keep the character intact.
Yeah. Yeah.
It also gives you time to think about the characters and maybe come up with brand new twists to them that you hadn't thought about before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A couple more comments.
I do have a question along these lines. What sorts of things did you find inspiration in to create these characters? Were you reading things or seeing other things that inspired you that kind of got the juices flowing on creating the characters that you created? What was the source of some of the ideas is probably what is the simple way to put it.
I can't tell you instantly what the source of any one character is. Generally, we're all influenced by by the world around us.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe a comment that a character has made someplace or a person has made may spin itself off into something else totally. The trick of being a writer is always finding new things to say about the characters, to make them interesting, to keep you doing that. So I can't tell you any one character how I came up with it. The only two characters that that I could even tell you in the negative would be Blade and Deathstroke. Both came to me in 1 second.
Wow.
Wow.
I wasn't even thinking about them. I was walking, I had just started working on Tomb of Dracula, and I was walking home from the train, and suddenly the idea came to me completely in 1 second, everything about the character. And the same thing happened with Deathstroke. I wish it happened more, but
so it's just your subconscious was percolating these characters from all your influences. Okay, well that answers the question. Thank you.
The trick again of being a professional writer or professional is seeing this random thing that's happening around you and figuring I can make that work. If you can't do that, if you can't just suddenly come up with a story based on something else and you miss the opportunity that it opens, you lose out quite a bit. Fortunately, I've had that happen to me.
Cool. Very cool. Thank you.
We've got a couple other comments here. Comic Talk Pop says, "Hey yo, what's up, Pops?" Let's see. Oven says, "Hello, Silverline family. What's up, Oven?" We can always count on Hyper to say like, subscribe, and share the link, folks. So you guys don't forget to do that. Hyper also has a question here. He says, Marv has worked on so many comics. Is there something that still is a pleasant surprise for a fan to bring for an autograph?
I think the stuff that I did very early on in my career, unfortunately, most people don't know about them, but occasionally I'll get a copy of the Blackhawks. And, of course, my name is on that one.
And that makes you smile?
Yeah, because that's somebody who's gone back. If they're older, they will usually say, "I bought this off the stand."
Wow!
And it's a really good feeling that that they like that very first thing and they continue to follow.
Yeah.
And they kept it.
Yeah. Now I don't understand this one totally, because I don't know the reference to this character, unfortunately. I apologize. But Twitless says, "I want to hear about Danny Chase. What went right and what went wrong with the character, considering how he was received?"
Well, I will tell that person, I don't think anything ever went wrong with that character. I think jumped on him before the character was developed. The very early issues with Danny were supposed to be he was a creepy kid. He was supposed to be a jerk. He was supposed to be all those things. Everyone reacted to him as if he was all those things. The whole thing was watching him grow into becoming a real person. He was very young. He was obnoxious. He was all those things. They took it as a negative, most of the fans, because they couldn't see that we were trying to develop and follow a character as they get better, as they realize they have to be serious. You don't start that way in life. You don't know what you're doing in life, and you learn through experience. And so I maintain that Danny was a good character because I knew where he was supposed to go.
Right.
So
you wanted to show the arc.
The only negative that I could say is somehow I didn't give them enough information to know that I was going to grow the character, but they should have assumed it based on all the other characters that we did.
Right. That just leads me to so many other questions. But I got to put my buddy Mark up here. Mark Largent says, just want to say thanks, Mr. Wolfman, for decades of enjoyment. I just picked up a hardcover of The Night Force to reread.
Thank you. Night Force is probably my favorite creation. So
really?
I'm always happy to see that.
So why? So since you say this is probably your favorite creation, why would you say that is so?
It's a very complex concept, and it worked. And it solved a ton of problems that I was searching for to develop and to figure out and to work with. And you can come up with all these ideas and it doesn't work. And as far as I'm concerned, Night Force worked. And even though we didn't have a large readership, everyone liked it who wrote in. And trust me, people are not averse to saying how much they don't like things if they write. Night Force is always very good press, and I've loved writing it. It also features some of the most intricate plotting that I've ever done. All the stories, they're very, very, very tightly plotted.
Tommy, you got a question? You just
No.
Okay. So one of the things you said there about fans made me think of this question. So the internet has changed the world, of course, but how do you feel having seen the way fans interacted with comic professionals and publishers from when you were young, even as a kid, to becoming a professional over the time? How do you feel the internet has affected that, and maybe some pros and or cons about it, if you have those thoughts?
The good thing about the internet is it's like a comic convention right in your room. You can get a chance to speak to people. You get a chance to relate to other comic fans. You can have good discussions, all of that sort of stuff. Where it's bad is the people who really get off on saying something nasty.
Yeah.
I was the earliest of the writers in New York to get a computer, and I got one with a modem specifically because I wanted to get onto CompuServe, which I just started a few months earlier. So I had a Victor 9000 computer, which was before DOS. See, that's how old it is. And they had special interest groups, SIGs, on CompuServe, including a comic book SIG. And I believe Walt Simonson went on there and in the very beginning, people were very nice. They'd ask questions. They do all this stuff. And the idea we had was to try to get them involved with it. Within 6 months, the trolls came and started insulting. Within 6 months of the dawn of this stuff, and started insulting, and all the professionals at that time, because I had been recommending it to people, all the people who were in it quit. We all just.
I was a member. I was a member for a while.
Of the one in
Comics and Animation Special Interest Group. Yeah, I was a member of that for a while.
Do you remember people leaving and asking? Because there were several special interest groups for comics.
I think I may have come along after you had gone through that, because I think all that got weeded out because it got much better later on. Although there were always some people that complained about everything. Later on we pushed those folks out eventually.
You know, they think it's fun to interrupt.
Yeah.
The flow. The idea was that we had, and why we wanted to do it was. This is such a wonderful hobby. We really love doing comics. We love reading them before we did them professionally. Let's just have fun. This is a great thing to do. Why are you being nasty?
Right.
You don't have to like every comic that's out there. I certainly don't.
No.
But that's opinion. And you don't have to insult somebody just to explain why you don't like something.
Change the channel, right?
I think part of that was the fact that what people don't realize about going online like that is you have this level of anonymity.
Yeah.
There's you're not standing right next to the person.
They never say
if you're using just text, you can't get visual cues as to whether this person is truly being nasty or whether they're just trying to be funny and being bad at it. That happens a lot. But there were plenty
socially
of people who were just plain out.
You could generally tell if a person's doing that. Also, if they get called up on it, their answer will further tell you if it's joking. Something
it will confirm or dispel. Yeah, almost immediately. Yep.
Yeah.
But I remember those days. I was part of CompuServe for a long time.
There aren't many of us left.
Yeah.
No.
There
is a Facebook page that has some of their membership, but it doesn't get used very often. So, but there's some of them are still out there.
Twitless said, "Thank you for the answer, Marv, about Danny Chase." Mark said, "I was a teen when I read the original issues. I'm enjoying it even more in my 50s, and that's about the Night Force." Cool as Heck says, "Gene Colan was amazing on Night Force. His page layouts were always so different."
Gene was phenomenal. I love him.
And Vic says, "You can't get slapped through a screen."
Exactly.
You guys, you got to jump in. I'm just going to keep asking questions.
Okay.
Well, you had mentioned that you said that you don't have to like everything. What stuff are you liking right now? That's not your own, of course.
I read a lot these days, to be honest. Yeah. The last book I read that I really liked was Tom King's Supergirl book.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was really, really excellent. And Tom in general, I like his work. I thought his Adam Strange was great as well.
I'm not going to put him on the spot, but I sent him some Silverline books. I know that when he gets around to reading those, he will love those.
Well, let's hope.
Yeah. So let's talk about editors for a minute in comics, Marv. You were an editor. You've worked with a lot of editors. What do you think? What do you feel are some of the best strengths of an editor? And what are some of the worst strengths of an editor? And then maybe name a couple of your favorite editors. Don't name any of the worst ones, just the best ones.
A good editor exists to improve your story, not their story, your story. the good editor will find where it doesn't work, where the points don't connect, where you're not explaining your plot, where because you know what's supposed to happen, you fail to convey that to the other people. Or a good editor will say, if you switch the scene to this will work a lot better, and they're right. Mm-hmm. And I've worked with a lot of good editors like Julie Schwartz and Roy and so many people down the line. A bad editor wants to use you as a typist. They want you to do their story. They don't really care what you're doing. I've only fortunately had one or two of those, and they're both out of the business now.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. So you mentioned Julie Schwartz and Roy Thomas. Any other editors that you can think of? You're like, hey, that was a good editor to work with.
So many, Archie Goodwin. See, because I've been an editor of my own material for so much, I haven't had that many editors. Mm-hmm. Most of them have been good. Just one or two weren't. I just can't think of them at the moment.
I'm not sure. I see a question here. I'm not sure whether I'm going to toss it up, but I'm not sure whether you're going to want to address this or not, Marv. Vic says, "Would you define Jim Shooter as a good or bad editor?"
Yes.
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 We will just leave it at that. Hyper says, let's go to Hypers. I like this question. He says, was there ever a creator you hoped to work with but didn't get to?
That's going to be my next question. Okay.
That's a good question.
Sorry, Pete.
Most of the people that exist today, in the past, I would have loved to have worked with Harvey Kurtzman and Will Eisner. Mm-hmm. I almost worked with Will Eisner and actually turned it down. And never got
what? Why?
For a very logical reason. He wanted me and Lindley to create a magazine for him and to do it. Humor magazine. This was in the 70s. And he came to us to do it. And I pointed out to him that he was currently doing a magazine called PS for the Army.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that was his major client and income, was doing this PS magazine. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it features it was how to put together weapons, how to put together. It was all things that soldiers needed to learn done as a comic.
They made that at the Cubit School for years, because I think Joe did it for a long time, and the Cubit School students.
Beautifully done thing. And I said to him, you do realize this is the height of the Vietnam War. If we're supposed to do a humor magazine like the Lampoon, which is what he wanted, we'd be attacking the government. And you're the government. He said, "Oh my God, I didn't think of that. Thank you." Because that whole assignment could have been taken away. And it crushed me because I desperately would have loved to have done it. But the truth of the matter is it would have been very bad for him.
Wow.
So a lot of artists, I would have loved to have done a comic story with Jack. And not just I did a lot of work with Steve Ditko, so I got that there. I did several comics with Steve. But all I've ever done with Jack was as the editor covers and working with him on that. So many artists I couldn't even begin to tell you. I wish I could have worked with, but there's just so many artists out there.
Yeah, there are. And I think Vic actually said my bad about the shooter question. And I think that's the answer, Vic, to your question there. Any modern creators you would love to work with? Can you think of anybody young and upcoming that you're like, man, I'd like to work with that guy?
I honestly feel that these days we have the best art that has ever been done in comics. So many of the artists today are really brilliant, and they all have individual styles, and they really love. So I can't even think of all of them right now, but
Yeah.
there's so many artists out today that I'd love to work with.
Yeah. What do you think I mean, you've seen, and I asked you this briefly the last time I saw you, I think in San Diego, and we talked briefly about it. But you know, one of the things in storytelling that we've seen comic storytelling change from the very compressed stories that we would get in the 1950s to the very long decompressed stories, probably from the early aughts and into that. What do you think? Do you have a preference for either of those, compressed, decompressed, on a continued story, or a standalone? What are some of your thoughts about those?
I'm going to give you an answer that you won't like.
Okay.
Essentially, whatever works best for the story. I
Okay.
don't, pure and simple. If the story requires 100 pages, that's what it should be.
Mm-hmm.
If it requires 8 pages, that's what it should be.
Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't expand it beyond its. Actors always say you come in as late as possible and you leave as
Right.
early as possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what you're told in writing movies all the time on TV, and that's what I believe as well.
Yeah. So, but how would you kind of work with that idea when you know you've got to write a 22-page comic? If you say, well, this story is only 8 pages, what do you do?
You have to think in terms of what you can do in 8 pages. I've done a bunch of those recently for DC, and I just did a 10-page Superman. So you don't do a type of story that requires you to do a 20-page story if you only have 10 pages. You have to look at it and you have to say, I am creating a story that is aimed for 8 pages, and I'm going to do that. Now, I started in the early days when DC had all those books like House of Mystery and House of Secrets. What they did with all the young writers was assign us 1 and 2 page stories.
Wow.
Huh. Oh, gee.
And you still had to tell a story in 1 page.
That's tough.
And it's very tough, but it really taught you to figure out what was vital and what was really important to tell the story. So in 1 page, you can only have maybe 1 scene. And that has to be pretty much a dialogue scene or something like that. You have to think, you have to come up with a story that will work in 1 page. And then you play it as strongly as possible in terms of writing, in terms of the characterization and plot, and you can do it. A good line of dialogue will help explain who a character is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is it? The Hemingway song, the Hemingway story that's 6 words long. Baby shoes, for sale, never worn.
Yeah, I've seen that. Do it, and I always do one of those because they're fun.
Yeah.
To actually do a story in 6 words.
Yeah, they're tough. So what would you say today, tomorrow, yesterday, last year? What would you say are, if you were talking to a class of comic writers to be, what would you tell them are the key components of a story? What does a comic story need to be a good story?
Again, it's one of those things. Once you tell people that concept of what you think it needs,
they'll write the formula.
Then that's what they're going to do.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily, that may work for one story, but it may not work for your other story. The only 2 things of importance are character and what your story is.
Mhm.
and you have to make the character work in that story, and that story has to work only for that character.
Yeah.
So that's what I would tell them, but I couldn't tell them anything else, because anything else they will root on that. They will think that's the magic pencil,
Right.
and they have to be able to do whatever is best for the story, but they have to think in terms of, does this story require 5 scenes, or does this story require 1 scene?
Mhm.
How do I make it require 1 scene if I only have a 2-page story?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. What would you say? And I know you say you don't read a lot of content today, but of the recent stuff that you've read, without naming names, we're not naming names.
No, name names. Name names. Go ahead.
No, name names. What would you say is the biggest weakness in today's comic storytelling? No names.
I honestly could not tell you, because I don't read enough. And what I read is, I go to the comic shop and I ask them, and they always know what I like and stuff. What would you recommend? And they'll give me a book that they recommend. So I don't read the bad ones. I don't have time to read the bad ones.
That's right.
Or the comic shop is aware of that. They know what I like, and they'll say, give this one a try.
Well, have you picked up any oddball stuff that you were just like, I'm not gonna like this, and then you picked it up and you go, well, this is pretty cool. You have anything lately?
Yeah, the WandaVision thing that Tom did a couple of years back.
Mm-hmm.
The Hawkeye that oh god, I can't think of his name.
Matt Fraction.
Yeah, Matt did. I thought that was really off the wall and really well done. A lot of the stuff that oh god, I hate when my brain goes away.
Don't we all?
Yeah.
That happens more often as you get older. It's
Batman writer.
Batman.
Yeah, he really came in and did a phenomenal job with Batman, and did the Court of Owls and all that sort of stuff.
Scott Snyder.
Yeah, Scott. Really good writer. Really solid writer.
You've mentioned a lot of Marvel DC stuff. Any independent stuff, or you strictly just kind of stick with the Marvel DC stuff when you go into shops?
I stick with what's recommended to me, and on my own, I know that I liked Boom Studios did what was it called? Something James.
Lumberjanes.
Hmm?
Lumberjanes.
Lumberjanes, I thought was really wonderful. I was reviewing comics for
Ross.
my library, and I read Lumberjanes, and I thought it was wonderful.
Well, I think Silverline's going to send you a bunch of books, and you can check those out.
I don't have time. Please don't, because I may never get a chance to look at it.
My question was going to be is, who is your favorite independent publisher, and why is it Silverline?
Why isn't it us?
No, it's funny. I do remember when I saw you at San Diego, I asked you if it was okay to reuse the intro that you had written for Demon's Tales, and you said, "Oh, I don't remember writing that." And I showed it to you, and you said, "Oh, yeah, okay, you can use it again."
I wrote it the first time. Might as well use it again.
Yeah. Guys, got questions?
I kind of got one. So Roland and I were at a comic show yesterday, and I was trying to. I've been looking for this for a while, and I ended up finally finding a relatively. Because when I buy back issues of stuff, I don't really need the most pristine stuff. It's just what I just want to read the books and stuff. So I had this when I was younger. Can you see what I've got in my hands?
Oh yeah.
Oh
So
yeah.
I was flipping through. I finally got me a copy. I had one. I don't remember how I got this when I was younger, but I lost it somewhere along the way, or it's packed in something. But I don't have it anymore. So I finally got a new copy, and I was looking through this, and guess whose name I see in it? Your name.
Oh.
I'm aware.
What? So exactly, what is a consulting editor? Because you are listed amongst several. So do you remember doing anything? What's your involvement with this? I'm just bringing it up because it's just topical. Because I picked it up and I was flipping through it a while ago, and I'm like, oh, we're going to talk to Marv later. Let me bring this up to him and see what he has to say about it.
Because I was the editor at Marvel, not on that specifically. I was just available if they had any questions.
Okay.
They didn't need to. Jerry Conway, who wrote that, had written Superman and Spider-Man for long periods of time, so he certainly didn't need any of that. But the companies wanted consulting editors on both sides.
Gotcha.
We were available.
Interesting.
Okay, that was my question.
Oh, Vic's got another question here. I like this one here. He says, anything from the black and white explosion in the 1980s that you have fond memories of? Other than Cat and Mouse, of course.
That's a strange question. Because it's, first of all, it's so long ago, and I don't know. I'm sure, but I just don't have. I just can't think of him. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
That's a good answer.
That's a good answer. Yeah, it's so long ago I can't remember.
Yeah.
So if you were to talk to what did he say here? Vic says, "Sorry, I'm a nerd." If you were to talk to a group of young creators today, and they're like, "Hey, we want to make comics," what would be maybe your top 5 things to tell them they need to do?
They need to read? Is that what you're asking?
No, not necessarily what they need to read, but what do they need to do? I mean, reading, I would assume, would be one of them. But what would you say they need to do in order to work in the industry?
Oh, you're talking about breaking into the industry.
Right.
Okay. If the first thing is, if you're a writer, think of yourself as a writer and not a comic book writer. Because you should be able to write everything. You should be at least give it a try to write everything. What you need to do is take comics that you really love and analyze them. Why do you love it? What are these books? What is the story? How is it broken down? How do they do it? So that you start understanding the building blocks of a story. If you're an artist, you draw story, don't do pinups. Because you could spend a year in pinup, and you could spend all this time, but it doesn't tell you it doesn't tell an editor if you can tell a good story.
Right.
You may get a cover from those, but if you want to do the insides as an artist, show them that you can tell a story visually, that the scenes flow into each other, that the movement makes sense. Look at the best stories and see what they've done to understand it, but don't copy it. Just use it as a teaching tool. Other than that is find people who give you honest criticism.
Yeah, that's tough.
It's very tough because family won't.
Yeah.
Well, they care about you. They love you, whatever, and they don't want to hurt you if they don't like the story, so they won't give you the correct thing. You need to find people who will give you correct ones. And if you don't like their answer, figure out why. Figure out if they are, if they're correct or not. Very often they will be, because if several people say the same, have the same criticism, it's probably true. So.
Do you have anyone in your circle today that when you write something, you send it to them and say, "Hey, I need some feedback"?
I have people, if I wanted to do that, but generally I could figure it out on my own. I can figure out where it's gone wrong or something. That doesn't mean I'll come up with the correct answer, but I guess if I really had a problem, I certainly do have friends or professional writers who I could call and say something, but I just never have.
Right. Do any of them call on you for help sometimes?
Once, twice, but again, most of us can figure some of that stuff out. If you've been in it for a while, you have an understanding of what works and what doesn't.
Right.
You may not solve it, but you'll figure it out.
Right. Yeah. And there's a difference there, huh?
Yeah.
Pete, did you have another question? I saw you looking like you had a question.
I just wondering what's next for Marv. What are you doing now? What are you doing next?
I can't actually tell you.
Oh, right.
That figures.
That's good.
Not so.
Well, can you say, are you working on comic book stuff, or are you comic book? Are you working on print stuff? Or are you working on TV movie?
I'm doing
stuff?
both.
Okay.
Doing TV, I'm doing video game writing, which I've been doing for 10 years, and also comics.
Okay. Cool. Well, it'd be great to see a new book from you.
Well, I know that
the next thing out is I have a Superman story in November coming out. So that's the next coming out.
Cool. Well, I know the last time we spoke in person, you were working on Epic Mickey, I think, at the time.
Epic Mickey?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah. So how did you make the shift? How, and maybe why and how did you make the shift from comics to animation or video games, I should say?
First of all, I've never just been a comic book writer. As far back as the early 70s, I wrote novels. So, as I say, my belief is that you're a writer. My favorite writing is comics. But I'm a writer who does comics. I've done TV. I've done animation. I've done animated movies. I've done all sorts of things. So it's not. And I like video games. I've always been a video game person. And there was a chance to do one, to work with somebody on it, and really got to like it. The Epic Mickey. I was the editor of Disney Adventures magazine for a while, and loved writing Mickey Mouse. It sounds strange, but the comics are really solid, and the character's a really good character. So not only did I understand Mickey because they liked what I did in the comics, but I had already written video games, so it made sense to sort of put them together.
So, do you play any video games?
All the time.
What are you playing? What's your favorite console right now?
Right now, it's the Oculus.
All right, you're getting immersive. Cool.
And I'm currently playing a game called Moss 2. Moss 1 was wonderful, and now I'm in Moss 2.
What kind of game is that?
It's a VR game, first of all.
Okay.
It's as all the Oculus stuff is. It's a search game, and you have to figure out the strategy of how to get your character to go through do this search for something. It's because it's again Oculus. It's really a wonderful tool to see the world in a different way because you're actually walking through a three-dimensional.
Yeah.
Neat.
Hyper's got a couple of Hyper says Marvel's working on a new Sergeant Rock series. I wish.
No, I doubt it.
They hadn't told you about it?
Hyper's a big Sergeant Rock fan, so that would be something he would like. Sorry, Hyper, you tried, man. Vic said NDA there. Hyper's got a question here. It says, was there a big pay difference in editor-in-chief, or writer?
I think there was with editor-in-chief. They're all different because writers are paid by the page.
Mm-hmm.
An editor is paid by the job. Editor-in-chief is paid by any number of circumstances. Again, I'm not on the business side of it, and I left Marvel because I didn't want to be on the business side of it.
Right, right. Now, you were at Marvel before they were paying royalties, right?
Yes.
So were you still there when the royalty system was instigated, or had you left and then came back?
No, I left and did not come back.
Never came back. Have you not done anything for Marvel since then?
I did a Bullseye story.
And that's it?
But not really. Most of the
Wow.
work I've done is for DC or other companies.
Wow.
Wow.
I
I don't guess I
hadn't given that much thought, but I can't think of anything. Wow.
Yeah. So kind of once you said bye, you said bye.
Excuse me?
I said, so kind of once you said bye, you said bye.
Yeah, but you never know.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
Well, many of the editors at DC today were editors at Marvel in the 90s.
Everybody moves back and forth.
Yeah.
But again, I've done so many different things outside of comics as well that, I don't think about any one company that much because I'm writing for so many different companies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I know that Hyper might have this question, and he doesn't. I'm going to ask it. So how did your relationship with Malibu come about in the early 90s, and how did the whole bravura thing happen with you?
Malibu was a couple miles, just a few miles from where I lived. And during the big earthquake that we had to move out of our house. And while repairs were being done, and Dave Ulbrich said, if you need a space to work, because I was going to be in my wife and I, in just a small apartment, they had room for me up at Malibu. And I said, fine, that's great, because I'd have a computer, I'd have all this. It would be really nice. And at some point they said, would you be interested in doing one of these creator-owned books that Bravura was going to do, which was the offshoot of Malibu? And I said, yeah, and I did Man Called Axe for them.
Mm-hmm.
And then Marvel bought it, Malibu, and I moved Man Called Axe over to DC. And did that, but that was during the time when nothing was selling well. So the book lasted, got good reviews, but the book lasted a very short time.
Yeah, it did. And I still remember. I don't know if you ever recall it, but we had all kind of questions at Malibu about, is it Axe or is it A10? And of course, that was part of the story, right?
Yeah, it was purposely vague because I wanted people to think it was Axe, but the Axe was the A Roman numeral X, which would have been Assassin 10.
Mm.
That's what AX stood for.
Yeah. I remember that. All right, so Vic's got the kind of the similar question. Oh, look at that. Hyper says, "I sure miss Malibu." Well, Hyper, we're trying to give you this, we're trying to give you the spirit of Malibu with Silverline. And then he says, Marv, what were your thoughts on the Malibu titles? Do you remember any of them?
Yeah, they were fine. You had good writers on them.
Mm-hmm.
I did some Ultra Force
Mm-hmm.
for Hank Canals, but I didn't really do anything for Malibu. I did most of my stuff for Bravura.
Bravura, yeah. Now, did you write the Ultra Force stories that were drawn by George Perez?
I think so.
I think so too. Yeah, because he only drew. Oh, gee, I don't remember how many he drew. 4, 5, 6, something like that. I think the launch
was a
launch
long
title.
It was frankly such a long time ago that I don't really recall a lot of it.
Yeah. Vic says some of my first comics were Malibu, which is weird considering my age. And that's what brought you to Silverline, isn't it, Vic? All the Malibu connections. Well, it wasn't unusual for you to be in an office nearby because of the New York thing, but was it unusual because it was Malibu and wasn't Marvel or DC?
No.
No.
No, they were very nice. They offered me space, and I was very happy to have it.
Oh, here we go. I knew somebody would chime in and said, I think Marv did Ultra Force issues 8 and 9. Thank you, James. I knew somebody would remember that.
Yeah, we got some fans know what they're talking about.
Yep,
They're really heavily into this stuff.
They know exactly what it is.
Yeah, that's great.
So Marv, probably the last question here. What character or characters have you not written? Have you not written that you would like to write? Can you think of any?
I enjoy every time I get a chance to write Superman. He's still my favorite as a writer. If I wrote Marvel, it would be Spider-Man.
Spider-Man.
I really love. Those are my two favorites. My favorite DC is Superman. My favorite Marvel is Spider-Man.
Wow.
There are always books. I'd love to have written Dead Man.
Okay.
And I like doing all different types of stuff, but can't think at the moment. The only thing I haven't done that I would like is Popeye. I like to do one Popeye story.
Okay,
cool. In the style of the comic strip, not anything else.
Right. Yeah. Well, we're in good company because Spider-Man is my favorite Marvel character, Tommy's favorite Marvel character, and Pete's favorite Marvel character. I'm not sure about Rob. Rob, who's your favorite Marvel character?
It's a toss-up between Captain America and Iron Man.
Captain America and Iron Man. So
yeah, they're in a very tight tie.
Yep. So we all are big fans of Spider-Man here as well. So.
Yeah, I love Spider-Man too, but I'm sorry if you're asking favorites.
I did.
Okay. Yeah, I like Spider-Man. Especially the early Ditko stuff was just amazing.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Although the later stuff during Marv's run through there were some amazing things being done then as well.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. Marv, if you could take over Marvel today. What are some of no names? If you could take over Marvel today, what are some of the first things that you would do as editor-in-chief?
Who would you fire?
No names. No names.
That would require me knowing what Marvel's doing. I don't read them, so I don't see. DC sends me the books on a comp copy list,
right?
So I read them, and that's why I know the DC stuff so well. Beyond my still working for them, I never see the Marvel books unless my store recommends it.
Wow. Okay.
So I have no view.
No view. Okay. Well, all right. Well, let me turn that to because you probably heard it. One of the things that you hear from DC fans complain a lot is the seemingly constant reboots at DC. So again, no names, but if you could take the helm of DC Comics today, what's some of the first things that you would do as editor-in-chief?
It's, so much of it is, you have to, those are the type of things you have to think about seriously if you were going to do something like that. I don't know
Not sure.
what I would do, because when I read the books, I don't read it for that thing. Also, there are a million reasons why certain decisions are made that you don't know why.
Right.
And you blame the editor when it's the business guys, or when it's something like that. So I would always want to really sit down and make sure all the characters work. When I did Titans with George, we came in at a time and just ignored pretty much what DC was doing, and just did what we felt we truly believed in. And it worked on the Titans.
Yeah.
So it's. I think you have to always look forward and not back. So I don't get too nostalgic about stuff.
Yeah.
When I did Crisis on Infinite Earths, I knew it was going to change the entire DC universe. But if we didn't do what we did, there may not have been a DC universe because the sales were so poor. And Crisis did a great job of getting the sales up there, and it worked well. So you have to always look ahead, but at the same time, you have to be truthful to the characters.
Right.
And that's a hard road to walk, because you're trying to do two very different type of things all at the same time. Take it into new worlds, but not anger people by ignoring everything that had been.
Right. Yeah. Well, I know we've talked about Crisis a little bit before, and I was a Marvel zombie as a kid, and I read Titans because my wife liked Titans, so I read Titans. That's the only DC book I read until Crisis, and then when Crisis happened, because I wasn't a multiverse fan, right? And DC kind of had the multiverse thing going on before multiverse was so popular. And so when Crisis happened, I'm like, this is the opportunity for me to jump on in the one continuity. And I bought many of the DC titles after Crisis.
Well, that's why we did Crisis, was to get the people who hadn't looked at DC to suddenly look at it and realize that DC had great stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Both companies do. I mean, that's something that, as a fan, you may argue, but the fact of the matter is, both DC and Marvel and many of the other companies as well all have really good stuff out there. And every book.
Yeah.
But so plenty of good, really good books, no matter which company produces it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we like to say on here, this is a great time for to be making independent comics, because it's so easy today for to have your comic made. It's a lot easier today than it was, what with digital printing, it's a lot easier to get it done than 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So, well, all right, you guys got anything? My clock has just seemed to zoom right along, and we're at the end of our.
I was just going to ask one thing. What are you thinking? And not to go on too much about it. What are you thinking about these latest batch of the movies, the superhero movies? Do we have too many of them coming out? Is there enough? Should we pull back on it a little bit? What's your thought about the movies that are coming out, or that have come out, or all the Disney Plus versions of all that kind of. Look, I see a grin on a smirk on your face. It's like he's like, I don't want to talk about it. Yeah, are you watching any of that stuff?
Let me turn your question around.
Oh no. I gotta go.
Okay. Are there enough top cop TV shows out there? Should we stop having cop TV shows?
There you go.
I agree. I love the fact that there's so much stuff. I just want your opinion.
Why are comic book TV shows treated differently than cop shows?
Mm-hmm.
As long as they're good, that's the only thing.
They're written well, good characters, well thought out storylines. Yeah, why not? Who cares? Yeah,
agreed.
So I think it's incorrect to say, are there too many of them?
Yeah.
The question to ask is, how many of them are good? How many of them are great? How many of them do you really want to read?
Right.
Yeah.
How many were worth seeing? So, all right, last chance.
I like your answer.
Yeah,
that's good.
Answer. Anytime we can turn anything around on Tommy, Marv, we take that opportunity.
Come on, quit picking on me.
All right, so the last thing we're gonna do, Marv, where can people find you on the internet, and maybe where are you going to be appearing in person next?
I'm not doing any cons at the moment.
Okay.
Because of COVID.
Okay.
And you can find me on Facebook, Marv Wolfman, and Twitter, the same thing.
Okay. All right. And so hang out for just a few minutes after we end the broadcast. We'll chat with you just a little bit at the end of the show. A couple real quick comments here. Vic says this was way too quick. We agree, Vic. I will make this deal with you, Vic. I'll wait a couple of weeks, and then I'll send Marv another email and ask him if he wants to come back sometime. Hyper says, I want to thank Marv for all the enjoyment he has given me throughout the years.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Tommy striking a nerve. Oh no.
Oh no. Like last week, I was getting people mad at me.
Tommy, where can folks find you on the interwebs?
Just go on to the Googles and type in Florimonte, FLORIMONTE. I'm mostly on Facebook, but you'll find me here and there, and here on Sunday.
That's right.
Yep. And then sometimes on the Wednesday show when I'm trying to drive around in the middle of the night.
He comes and interrupts us every now and then.
Right.
I'm out running the police when I'm on my thing, so don't leave.
Twitless says, thank you for all the interesting and informative conversation. I appreciate Marv for sharing from his wealth of experience. Thank you, Twitless, for hanging out with us. Phil Leon said, where does the time go? And great show. Thank you, Phil, for hanging out with us. Retro Maniac James says, thank you for everyone in the chat, through the chat. Vic says, Tommy, I tried the Dollar Tree comics and it was interesting to say the least. So
really, I didn't have a chance. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago. I hadn't had a chance. My wife has been by there and she said that she couldn't find any. So, oh
well. Pete, what about you? Where can folks find you on the interwebs?
On the Google, you type in Peter Clinton art, and I'm sure
there you are.
There you
like
are. Right.
Go to the top.
Where's your hat today, Pete?
No, because I can't get into the studio at the moment, so all my hats and my studio is locked away.
You still drawing, right?
Locked away.
Yeah, there you go. That's what I want to see.
Did you get kicked out of that? You got kicked out of the house?
A cover for Steam Patriots, and I've spent the better part of the day drawing a steampunky cart.
A boiler. Rob, what about you? Where can folks find you on the interwebs?
Okay. Well, you can find me every week on the Wednesday Wham, except for this week. I'm unfortunately going to be out of town and away from any. I might be able to pop in for a minute or two. It'll depend on what's going on there. But on the internet, robmdavis.com is a link to just about everything I do. Another one is airship27hanger.com. That's the publishing business I have with Ron Fortier. that we do the pulp recreation books with. But yeah, if you go to robmdavis.com, that has my bio and it has a few links
There you are.
other places to reach me. That should encourage me to actually go over and refresh that website. It probably needs
Right.
some links fixed. But
There you
yeah,
go.
that's where they can find me.
And you can find me on all the social places. Look for Roland Man. I think it's Man Roland on Twitter. Marv, hang on till after the bumper. We're going to chat a little bit. But until next time, you guys remember what we do. We say, make mine Silverline. Good night, everyone.
Hey, I'm Pat Broderick. Make mine Silverline.